he wrote about grace and wrote against the papacy and wrote against everybody else. The unfortunate thing is, in this one, he does become, it's 170 pages long. You're welcome to read it, volume 47. Okay? It's called On the Jews and Their Lies. Okay? But the lies are not about those kinds of things. I'm going to submit to you that Luther was not actually anti-Semitic. He was anti-Judaic. What does that mean? Okay? Let me try and explain. This whole thing begins by Luther recounting that the Jewish people tend to believe they have a special standing with God because of the temple that was theirs, because of the law that was given to them, because of their circumcision, because of those sorts of things. And he says, none of that matters. It's a lie. You don't have special standing with God for that. Okay? It's a new day, a new covenant. Okay? That old covenant is abrogated. We have a new covenant. So he spends the first part talking about that. Then he takes 4 Old Testament passages from Isaiah and Daniel and so on, and he spends most of this treatise telling how those things clearly point to Jesus as Messiah. And therefore, for the Jewish community, for practicing religious Jews now, to say that Jesus is not Messiah is a lie. Their own scriptures clearly demonstrate that Jesus is the Messiah. He fills all of the requirements of their Old Testament. He is clearly Messiah. So the lies he's talking about are those things. All right? So most of the book is about that. Then, unfortunately, he gets to a passage here where he says, well, what should I do? And part of the problem here now is that I've never been to the Holocaust Memorial in Washington, D.C. I've been to them in other countries. But in D.C., they quote part of Luther. I don't know how much of it they quote, but he said some things here that I wish he hadn't said. and by the way, the Lutheran Church has apologized for Luther's writings on this. But I'm going to tell you what he said. I'm going to read for you what he said, and then I want you to be clear about what he didn't say. Okay? What should we do with these Jewish people? First, to set fire to their synagogues or schools, and to bury and cover with dirt whatever will not burn, so that no man will ever again see a stone or cinder of them. Well, why? Because they're teaching falsehood. They will not accept Jesus Christ as Messiah. What did he take as an oath as a doctor? To teach only true doctrine and point out those who teach falsehood. So what he said here is like he would say it to the Pope. And okay. But that's pretty bad. All right. Second, let's see. I advise that their houses also be razed and destroyed. For they pursue in them the same aims as in their synagogue. Instead, they might be lodged under a roof or in a barn like the gypsies. Okay. Third, I advise that all their prayer books and Talmudic writings in which such idolatry, lies, cursing, and blasphemy are taught be taken from them. Fourth, I advise that their rabbis be forbidden to teach henceforth on pain of loss of life and limb. Okay. Fifth, I advise that safe conduct on the highways be abolished completely for the Jews. Sixth, I advise that usury be prohibited to them, that all cash and treasures of silver and gold be taken from them and put aside for safekeeping. For what purpose? Such money should now be used in no way other than the following. Whenever a Jew is sincerely converted, he should be handed 100, 200, or 300 florins, as personal circumstances may suggest. With this, he could set himself up in some occupation for the support of his poor wife and children, the maintenance of the old and feeble. Okay? So it wasn't just take their money, it was to set it aside for those who converted. All right? Because Luther believed the Jews would convert to Christianity. And he wrote this in 1543, died in 1546. This is not simply, I'm an old man and I kind of lost track of what I was saying. He meant this in that he was embittered. He was embittered that they had not converted in large numbers. And so, okay, that's that sixth advice. There's one more here. 7. I recommend putting a flail, an axe, a hoe, a spade, a distaff, or a spindle into the hands of the young, strong Jews and Jewesses, letting them earn their bread in the sweat of their brow, as was imposed on the children of Adam. Okay. This all got grabbed by the Nazi regime, of course, as, see, great Martin Luther said to do this. What did Martin Luther not say to do? to kill them. He said nothing about exterminating the Jews at all. In fact, he was not against the Jews. For any Jew who became a Christian, welcome. He was against Judaism, that is the teaching of the Old Testament without acknowledging that the New Testament had superseded it. So Luther was rash. There's no getting around that. And unfortunately, this got picked up by the Nazis and became part of their supporting document for doing the horrible things they did. But I think it's not really fair to say that Luther was anti-Semitic in that sense. What he really wanted was to say, if you don't agree with us, leave. Just like France had said, and Spain had said, and England had said, and Bohemia had said, and Italy had said, if you don't like us, go back to your own country and teach the lies you want to teach, but don't teach it here among us Christian people. That's essentially what was going on for Luther. And he was doing the same thing against the Turks, same thing against the Papists, the same thing against other reformers. He didn't happen to write these burn their houses kind of thing about them, which is most unfortunate. And so what it says to me is, about Luther is this, that Luther was like you and me. He was a very real human being who got his dander up and said things sometimes that he really should not have said, at least not in a public way. And my guess is we've all done the same thing. We've made harsh statements about people and wish we could take it back, because sometimes we've said them out loud, and it was like, did I just say that, or was that just in my head? So, all the things that Luther wrote, what's the point of them? Is the point of them this treatise against the Jews and their lies, which really points out they should believe in the Messiah, and they don't, therefore they're opposing the Messiah, therefore I'm against them. Okay? That's the extent of Luther and the Jews. Next slide. We'll talk more about this on another occasion, but what happened at the battles actually were fought between Catholics and Protestants. Okay? Set the Jews aside for now. Catholics and Protestants fought battles over the faith. And this went on after Luther's death in 1546. In 1555, the Treaty of Augsburg was signed between Catholics and Lutherans. And what they decided to end the warfare was that whatever the prince of a province was, that's what the religion of the province would be. So Frederick the Wise, for example, as a Lutheran, if you lived in Saxony, you were a Lutheran. If you were a Catholic living in Saxony and didn't want to be a Lutheran, you moved. Okay? It'd be like having Los Angeles County and Ventura County and saying, if you're Lutheran, you live in Ventura County. If you're a Catholic, you go to LA County. Yeah, but I like it here, but I'm a Catholic. I don't care. You get to be a Lutheran if you're here, or you move. All right? That's what happened. And essentially, northern Germany became predominantly Lutheran, and southern Germany remained predominantly Catholic, Austria, and so on. The Scandinavian countries, the Lutheran Church spread into the Scandinavian countries. We'll tell more about that later on, because I want to talk at another occasion about how it came to this country and how that all worked out and all the kind of funny things here. But when you think about Luther, there are all kinds of things we can say about him. But I think the most important thing we have to focus on is what was most important for him. What was the thing that drove him beginning to end? It was that awareness, that wonderful, like he said, it was as though the windows of heaven were thrown open when he realized we are justified, we are righteous before God as a pure gift from God. That's it. You can't work it, you can't earn it, you just get to receive it. And I think that's the best news there is, frankly. That's why I'm a Lutheran. It's not because Luther was such a kind man always. It's not because Luther didn't have his feet of clay. It's not that Luther was not a sinner. Okay? At the end of his life, the people who were in the room with him when he died asked him, do you stand on this faith? Do you want to declare that you stand on this faith, that you are saved by the grace of God alone? And he says, yeah. And then he said, Jesus loves me, the Bible tells me. Jesus. So that's who Luther really was. Luther is a very complex figure. The period in which he lived is a very complex time in history, and you're going to hear more about that from Arnie Schultz. He'll tell us about that. We're going to hear about the music of Luther, of the Reformation. We're going to hear about all kinds of different pieces of it. Pastor Jack has some stories to tell us about Luther and family and marriage and all those kinds of things. There is so much to tell about it. Again, if you want to start reading those volumes,
Sit on there right away.
yeah, it'll keep you busy for a while. The last one, next to the last one is called Table Talk. Literally, he would sit at a table with students and so on, and they'd jot down things he was saying. That would be really dangerous. Would you like someone recording what you're saying at your table all the time? But virtually all the stuff he said got recorded after a while. Luther was truly an amazing man. Chief thing about him is he came to understand the heart of the gospel. We are saved by grace through faith. And that's what we have to hang on to. And the way we know that for sure is two things. One is we have the cross, and the second is we are baptized. Whenever he felt assailed by the devil, he would say, I'm baptized. You can't have me. God has me. All right? So, thus far today, I'd be happy, by the way, at any time to talk about any part of this at greater length with any of you who'd like to do so. I just think it's a fascinating time of history. I think Luther was a complex and fascinating man, but he certainly came to see clearly the heart of the gospel. He did not, by the way, want a church named after himself. The church in Germany, East Germany especially, and in Eastern Europe is called the Evangelical Church, okay? Not the Lutheran Church. Luther did not want to name it after him. It was actually named after him in derision. All those followers of Luther, all those Lutherans. But we claim it proudly now. Okay? And yes, we apologize for the unkind things he said and the hateful things he said, but we also praise God for the marvel of his clarity of the gospel. So, go in peace, serve the Lord.